Hello and welcome. I am Exolite and this is my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about a little girl who was riding her bike to church and she was never seen again. She was murdered, but her body has never been found. Before we get started, if you would please like this video, subscribe, comment below, and I will leave the address to my Etsy shop for my art. I'm wanting to do things a little darker, so if you want to go take a peek, that'd be great. All right, let's get started. Sara Ann Wood was born in New York on March 4th, 1981. She was the youngest of three children born to Robert and Frances Wood. Her father was the pastor at Norwich Corners Presbyterian Church in a rural community of Sauquoit, New York. I'm not sure I got that right. I think so. She and her two siblings, Dusty and Nikki, attended the church that their father was the pastor of. The family's home was on 300 Hackadam Road in that little village. Sara Ann was a lovely child. She was described as intelligent and religious and lively. It is said that she had a love of dancing, and she also adored poetry. Her teachers said that she was funny, so funny that she would start giggling, and then the class would start giggling, and the teacher would start giggling, and the teacher recalled that she would have to turn around with her back to the students and say to herself, "Okay, I am the teacher. Stop laughing." Her brother said that she was a huge fan of Dolly Parton, and aren't we all? He also said that she had a giving personality. The classmates of Sara said that she was everybody's best friend. She was so much fun to be around. You just imagine that 12-year-old girl who's so funny and smart. A weird thing with this story is that this little girl looks so, so similar to me when I was that age that it's unsettling a little. Sara was last seen at about 2:30 p.m. on August 18th, 1993. She was riding her bicycle up a steep hill. She was close to her father's church, and she was carrying a display board, a church songbook, which is called a hymnal, and she had some vacation Bible school literature with her. That's a lot to be carrying on a bike. The location of her final sighting was less than a half a mile from her home. At the time of this sighting, Sara was on her bike, although, according to the man who abducted her, she had gotten off of her bicycle and was walking alongside the road, pushing the bike when he spotted her. When Sara disappeared, she was wearing a pink t-shirt with the words "Guess Who" embroidered on the front, turquoise blue shorts, and brown sandals. She was also wearing her glasses. Within an hour of Sara being abducted, her parents, brother, and sister became alarmed by her absence. It wasn't like her. The child was reported missing to police later in that same afternoon, and several hundred police officers and volunteer firefighters searched several dozens of square miles of terrain. Sara's family themselves immediately pursued all methods that they could use to locate her, including conducting searches around their neighborhood, printing and distributing missing person flyers. Her bicycle was found. It was discovered leaning against a tree several yards from Hackadam Road. A search of that area revealed that she had her coloring book and crayons hidden in an area of brush near her bicycle. Investigators rapidly determined that the child had been abducted. An extensive search of the vicinity of Sarah's disappearance and other potential areas of interest were conducted over the following 5 days by both state police and forest rangers. These ground-level efforts and extensive public appeals for information leading to Sarah's whereabouts and safe return failed to either locate her or yield any clues about her whereabouts. Although the extensive news coverage of her disappearance galvanized much of the public throughout upstate New York, and the ongoing efforts to locate Sara received considerable media attention. More than 1,000 leads came in, and they were pursued and discounted. And the public reward for Sara's safe return had reached over $150,000. The police searches were bolstered by hundreds of members of the public. They assisted in the search and provided refreshments for all volunteers and investigators. Teal ribbons, which symbolized Sarah's favorite color, were placed in numerous public locations. By the week following Sarah's disappearance, the effort to recover her alive or deceased had expanded statewide and then nationwide. All developments pertaining to the search were relayed to an improvised headquarters named the Rescue Sara Center. Thousands of missing persons posters were circulated across America, and appeals and updates regarding Sara's abduction were broadcast on 48 Hours and America's Most Wanted. In 1996, a 45-year-old janitor whose name is Louis Stephen Lent Jr. of North Adams, Massachusetts, was formally charged with Sara's abduction and murder. Lent had been arrested and convicted of attempting to abduct a 12-year-old girl named Rebecca Savarese at gunpoint in Pittsfield on January 7, 1994. This attempt failed because the little girl pretended that she was having an asthma attack as he was trying to drag her by her backpack into his van. He let her go just long enough for her to get her arms out of the backpack, and she ran away. The attempted abduction was observed by an eyewitness who then went above and beyond the call of duty and followed that vehicle from a discreet distance until he could note the entire license plate number, which he then gave to the cops. A search of the kidnapped vehicle revealed duct tape, a knife, a gun, a pair of child sunglasses, and candy. A search of Lent's van revealed Sarvise's backpack and a loaded revolver. A search of Lent's Lanesboro home revealed that underneath his house he was building a room. Finding that room caused him to confess that the sole purpose of that room was for restraining and abusing future victims, primarily female, prior to their murder. He further elaborated that his ideal intended victim would be between the ages of 12 and 17, with long hair and, quote, just beginning to develop physically, and whom he could, quote, take out from this area of confinement whenever he desired to abuse them. This room was still incomplete, thus meaning that any victims he had already successfully kidnapped meant that they were going to be used as, quote, quickies before he murdered them. Lent was sentenced to serve a term between 17 and 20 years imprisonment for that attempted abduction. Shortly after Lent's arrest for Savarese's attempted abduction, investigators in New York started reviewing this case, and they saw signs that led them to believe that this was probably the man who had abducted Sara. So he was interrogated shortly after his arrest and soon confessed to Sarah's rape and murder. In addition to the October 22nd, 1990 abduction and murder of a 12-year-old Pittsville, Massachusetts boy named James Joseph Bernardo. Lent claimed to have encountered Bernardo outside the movie theater where he worked as a janitor. He said that he offered the boy $5 to move chairs into the theater, which Bernardo accepted. But once they got into the theater, he bound the boy's hands behind his back at knife point, then drove him to his home, where the child was bound by his wrists and ankles to Lent's bed. The following morning, he drove the blindfolded boy to an area of woodland in Newfield, New York, where he murdered him. And I'm going to skip the details of that. The boy's body was found by hunters several weeks after his abduction. The duct tape placed over the boy's mouth and across his eyes was a match to that discovered in Lent's vehicle at the time of his arrest. Thus, it substantiated his confession. Lent confessed to encountering Sara walking alongside her bicycle up Hackadam Road. He claimed to have dragged her into his van at knife point. He bound her hands and he drove her to the Adirondack Mountains where he essayed her before he murdered her in a gruesome manner that I'm also not going to describe here. But he did include the fact that she begged for her life. He then buried her in a very shallow grave within a clearing near Racket Lake at a location in or near the town of Inlet. He also said that he didn't bother to ensure that she was dead, but at least she was unconscious when he buried her. He agreed to draw a map of the location of her burial to assist investigators in the recovery of her body. An extensive search of the area around Racket Lake was mounted to try and locate Sarah's body. The search lasted for 2 weeks and involved over 100 state troopers and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Police. I didn't know there was such a thing. Numerous civilian volunteers and over 50 personnel from Griffiths Air Force Base. Search and rescue dogs were used, heavy equipment was used, and also in the search, many other civilians prepared meals with food donated by local businesses and the public for the searchers. Others, including Sarah's father, transported sandwiches, beverages, and excavation equipment from storage facilities to the search locations. And these extensive efforts ultimately proved fruitless. Clint then claimed that Sara had not actually been buried at that location at all, and he refused to disclose where the actual whereabouts of her remains were, claiming that he had buried another victim's body close to hers and he didn't want that to be found. Lent was tried separately for both homicides. In June 1996, he pled guilty to Bernardo's abduction and murder. On October 16th, he received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. At his formal sentencing for Bernardo's murder, he informed his attorney that he also wished to plead guilty to Sara's murder. However, reportedly upon seeing Sara's parents in the courtroom at this hearing, he refused to provide any further details pertaining to her actual whereabouts. 9 days after pleading guilty to Bernardo's murder on October 25, 1996, Lent pleaded guilty to Sara's abduction, rape, and murder. Although Sara's family were not present in the courtroom on this occasion, he again refused to provide any additional information regarding this child's whereabouts. Though Lent later recanted his confession to Sara's abduction and murder, he was convicted of her second-degree murder and formally sentenced to a concurrent term of 25 years to life in prison. His sentence was delayed by 2 months at the request of Sara's parents in the hopes that he might be persuaded to finally reveal the location of their daughter's body. In the months immediately prior to his sentencing, Lent refused a plea bargain offer from District Attorney Michael Daly, whereby he would not serve his life sentence inside a state prison if he revealed the location of Sarah's body. He also refused final personal pleas from Sarah's parents and brother to reveal where her body was throughout the sentencing phase of this trial. These final pleas from Sarah's family included Bible verses urging him to repent for his past deeds. His brother is quoted as saying, "You may think you have power over us because you know where Sarah's body is. We know where Sarah's soul is, so therefore you have no power over us." A final request from Judge Kirk to Lent to reveal the location of her body immediately prior to imposing his sentence was also completely ignored, prompting the judge to remark that he would have no hesitation in imposing the death penalty upon Lent had he had the legal option to do so in this case. Lent is currently incarcerated in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Investigators have not discounted future visits with him to discuss where Sarah is actually buried, although Michael Daly said that he believes Lent has taunted Sarah's family and investigators alike by refusing to reveal her burial location, stating in 2013, "I believe that he has misled us intentionally in a number of different areas, but he has given us all the information we need to find the location. He just hasn't given us the final piece, and he is challenging us to find that ourselves." In 2013, Lent confessed to the November 6, 1992 abduction and murder of 16-year-old James Donald Blusher. James was a mentally disabled teenager who disappeared while he was riding his bike to his grandma's home in Blandford, Massachusetts. He agreed to confess to the murder in exchange for his not being prosecuted. According to Lent's confession, Blusher was abducted close to his Westfield, Massachusetts home and his body discarded in the town of Beckett. Blusher's bike was discovered several days after he disappeared, although his remains have also never been recovered. Lent is also considered a suspect in the 1986 disappearance of Tammy Ann McCormick, 13-year-old Saratoga Springs junior high school student. McCormick was last seen alive by her older sister, whom she informed of her intentions to hitchhike to school. Keep the year in mind. She never arrived at her destination, although McCormick had informed school friends that she intended to run away to Florida before she disappeared. She did not take any of her personal belongings, and foul play is suspected in her case. Following Sarah's disappearance, her family founded the Sarah Ann Wood Rescue Center. This became the Mohawk Valley branch of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and remains operational to this day. This facility is located in Utica, New York, and it specializes in the preparation and distribution of missing child posters and remains the only geographically targeted missing child poster distribution center in the United States. That's insane. In 2017 alone, the efforts of this branch resulted in a safe recovery of 399 children nationwide. In 2018, there's a quote from Wendy Feichel, and she is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children Program Director. Okay. She said that we have sent out over 10.5 million posters of missing children all throughout the United States and represented about 11,000 missing children. Out of that 11,000, we've helped recover over 7,500. That's incredible. In the decade following Sarah's abduction, annual reports of child abduction in New York has decreased by 30%. Shortly after Sarah disappeared, a tree was planted in her honor at her middle school and a ribbon-shaped memorial installed in the grounds of the school. A plaque was later installed by her classmates in front of the tree in 1999, which was the year that Sarah would have graduated from high school. Despite numerous searches having been conducted to locate Sara's remains, as of now, her body remains undiscovered. Her family continues to hope her body will be found so that she can be given a quote Christian burial close to her relatives. Sara's abduction and murder ultimately inspired numerous initiatives by both law enforcement and the public within and around New York to raise public vigilance of the issues regarding missing children and child safety to prevent child abduction and sexual exploitation. Thank you for coming to my channel, and good night.